Hi, and welcome back. Today we're going to have a look at a brand new filter series from Erica Synths. A high-pass filter, a low-pass filter, and a filter coupler module that adds band pass and band reject functions for detailed sound shaping. First, we'll have a quick overview of the new modules, and then we'll dive into a couple of audio demos and patch ideas. First, for the high and low pass filter, and then when used in combination with the filter coupler module. These are the three new filter modules: a high pass filter, a low pass filter, and a filter coupler module. Both the high and low pass modules can be used as standalone filters and have the exact same layout and functionality. So let's look at those first. They both have a single input and an output for audio with a manual knob to set the input level. There's a nice large knob at the top to manually set the cutoff frequency. And here at the bottom there are two CV inputs to control that frequency with external control voltages. Each first input comes with a bipolar attenuator to dial in the amount of modulation. Then each filter has a manual control knob to set the resonance as well as the CV input, right here. Again, with an attenuator to set the amount of modulation from the CV input. Finally, each filter has a drive switch which applies post-filter overdrive. The amount of overdrive can be adjusted with a little trim pot on the back of the modules, or, of course, switched off. So, both filters work exactly the same, although of course one is a high-pass filter, so the cutoff control knob determines how much of the lower frequencies are cut off, and the other is a low-pass filter, with the cutoff knob determining how much of the high frequencies are cut off. Then there is the filter coupler module. This module works exclusively with these two filters and isn't used as an independent filter, but rather to control both filter circuits at the same time. You connect the module with both filters via ribbon cables on the back, and it has a switch here to determine the function. When it's set to off, you can use both high and low pass filters on their own, but when set to band reject or band pass, you can use the in and outputs on the coupler module to have your audio run through both filters. In band pass mode, both filters work together, so you can remove both the high and low end of your sound. This results into a custom bandwidth of frequencies that is allowed through. In band reject mode, the filters work together in such a way that both the high and low end are preserved. But you have the possibility to create a bandwidth of frequencies in the middle that is cut out, or, in other words, rejected from your audio. In both modes, you can use the cutoff knob from the main filters to set the frequency and create a custom curve. But you can also use the knobs on the coupler module to control both those knobs at the same time. The center frequency knob can be used to sweep both filters up and down, and the bandwidth knob controls the spacing between the frequency settings. Additionally, you have the CV inputs for both those parameters, which makes it easy to control both filters and the relative spacing with control voltages. The center frequency knob also comes with a built-in attenuator right here. So all modules are straightforward with direct one knob per function control. But having different modules gives you the routing flexibility to patch up the exact filter you need for your sound. As the low-pass filter is the most common, let's start with that one and listen to some quick sounds to get a basic idea for its character and resonance. Of course, a filter comes more alive with some basic modulation. So let's start patching. Within a simple melodic voice created with an oscillator, filter and VCA, as well as a little sequencer to create a melody, we can use a simple envelope generator to shape the filter movement. I also add a somewhat tempo-synced smooth random voltage to the filter to create some extra dynamics. Now we can play with the cutoff and resonance to make the filter's character stand out more pronounced. A nice trick to get more character out of a filter is to send it audio rate modulation. In our setup, we use the square wave from our main oscillator as our audio source. But we can use the sine wave from that same oscillator and send it as a modulation source to the filter. In this case, we use an external mixer to mix our control voltages before going to the filter. Finally, in this little setup we're adding a second sequencer so we can send the control voltage to the filter's resonance CV input. We're using a 7-step sequencer in this case, so the pattern keeps shifting with the 8-step melodic sequence. A high-pass filter is useful to control the low and mid-frequency range of your sounds. For example, to create mid-frequency percussive hits or to bring some air in pads. Let's start with some basic filter sweeps again. But again, we can create more interesting dynamics by patching things up. For example, let's create a percussive bass sound with two oscillators. We mix the oscillators together and send them through a high-pass filter. Then we use another mixer to mix in the noise that we send through a VCA first. Now we use a sequencer to control the pitch of the oscillators, as well as to trigger an envelope that we send to the VCA to let through some noise. And we also send the envelope to the pitch on one of the oscillators to create a transient. Finally, we use a second sequencer to control the cutoff frequency of the filter. This way, we can exactly dial in the right amount of low end on each step. If you want a more direct sidechain effect in this patch, instead of the sequencer, you can use an envelope follower on something like a kick and send that to the filter. This way, every time the kick or another bass-heavy sound hits, the filter cuts off more low end of your sound. A high-pass filter is also great if you're creating your own percussive sounds, like hi-hats from noise or metallic waveforms, so your sound stays crisp and clear. Or you can use it to clean up the low end of your lead synth line or pads, and use the resonance to accentuate frequencies in the mid-range of the spectrum. The filter really sounds nice when the resonance starts to interfere with the audio. Here, I'm just sending the filter a constant square wave and the sample and hold signal to the CV input, all with some post-filter overdrive. Because there are two filters, we have the possibility to patch them up in series to create even more control over our sound. A classic way is to run a high-pass filter into a low-pass filter. Let's set that up with the square wave again. This way, you can use the high-pass to accentuate low or mid frequencies and then use the low-pass filter to tame the harsh high end. And having two cutoff points and resonant frequencies, you can really push a sound into the extreme. Here, I'm just using this simple drone voice to mess around with the filter settings. Let's try that with some modulation from the black octa source. One regular and one inverted sine wave to the resonance amounts on both filters. And then add some random voltage to both the filter cutoffs. And an example with a less industrial drone sound. Here we take the main and sub outputs from a wavetable oscillator to a mixer and feed that in series through the high pass and low pass filters. And finally a VCA. We sequence the voice with a little sequencer that also triggers an envelope modulating both filters and the VCA. filter coupler module adds band pass and band reject functions to the filters. And it makes it easy to control the cutoff points of both filters at the same time. So let's have a look at what we can do with that. A bandpass filter is interesting to sculpt percussive sounds like hi-hats, for example, made from noise through a VCA that we send a steady envelope. With some smooth random modulation to the center frequency of the coupler module, we can have the hat sound move around in the frequency spectrum. Or when we patch up a drone sound with a few oscillators, we can use a bandpass filter to thin it up. When we send some modulation to the bandwidth control of the coupler, we can sweep a sound from very thin to huge and back again. Of course, you can still control the resonance on each of the regular filters when you are using the coupler module. So we can customize our drone sound. And let's add a spring reverb to get some extra emphasis on the bandpass. Band reject functionality is great to remove certain frequencies from a sound. Again, it could be a synth sound or drum loop, for example. They're also interesting for more extreme sound sculpting. For example, let's take a wavetable oscillator again and feed it to the coupler module in band reject mode. We set the band pretty narrow and crank up the resonance on both of the high and low pass filters. Then we send a simple sine wave LFO to the bandwidth of the coupler and the looping rising envelope to the center frequency. These last sound demos are pretty extreme, and I have to admit I really enjoy the post-filter overdrive a lot. But you can also use this filter series to subtly sculpt your sound in detail. If you'd like to support this video series, or you want to get access to the PDF sheets of the illustrations I use in this and many of my other videos, have a look at my Patreon. And if you'd like to see more modular content from me, smash that like, subscribe and bell button. But that's it for now, thanks for watching and see you next time.